Mercury in astrology. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you are feeling really wonderful and I hope you're really excited to get some insight onto the closest planet to the sun in our solar system, the smallest planet in our solar system, just a little bit bigger than the Earth's moon. We are talking today about Mercury, and oh my gosh, does Mercury play a huge role in our own individual birth charts, in our everyday lives as it transits and goes retrograde 3 times per year. We all know about Mercury retrograde. It's one of the, hottest topics in astrology and one of the closest topics to your average person. Everyone knows when Mercury goes retrograde, everything starts getting chaotic, some kind of chaos starts happening in our lives and we ask ourselves, oh my God, has Mercury gone retrograde? And a lot of the time, perhaps it has. And today we are diving into Mercury. We are going to learn about the deeper parts of Mercury. So more than just, the average, understanding of communications and short distance travel and day-to-day, things that we go through. We are talking about some of the aspects of Mercury that some of us have never perhaps heard of. As a long-time practicing astrologer myself, I have worked with every single Mercury sign. I have worked with all the transits. I've advised people based on their Mercury energy, and so I've seen it all, and I've worked with it all, and here is what I've learned. Thank you so much for being here, everyone, and I'm excited. I'm going to put a table of contents below. We're going to talk about Mercury in every sign, and I'm going to start with an intro to Mercury, and we're going to talk about Mercury as a planet and understand its essential energy before we look at how it changes slightly in every sign. Before we get started, though, everyone, I just wanted to invite you over to my Patreon page. If you're enjoying this content, you can gain access to Saturday tea chats with viewer requests, you can get early ad-free readings, and you can get all kinds of other exclusive healing content over there as it changes and shifts to become more and more of an encompassing service. So it will be linked below in the description box. I would love for you guys to come over there. We also now have a Discord community, so if you would like to join our community on Discord, surrounding some of these more esoteric topics like astrology, tarot, healing, good vibes, all of that kind of stuff. We are currently working on that, and Discord and Patreon integrate as well. So by joining the Patreon page, you can get a special role on Discord, and it's just really fun and a great way to kickstart your own healing journey and just kind of get into a field of energy where everyone's kind of there for the same reason. Everyone's on my Patreon page or on my Discord with like a similar intent to really kickstart their healing journey and to really find those good vibes. At least that's my goal with Patreon and Discord. So if you've been wanting to do that, be sure to check those out. If not, be sure to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter. I am on Instagram, and the presence is everywhere, so be sure to hit that bell button for sure to get notifications when new free content goes up here on YouTube. So without further ado, let's dive straight into Mercury. So as I am coming to you today, Mercury is direct, and it is in Gemini when I am filming this on May 18th, 2020. So this is the best time to be looking into Mercury energy because Mercury is at home in Gemini, and it is direct. So right now, we have some access to some of the best Mercury energy, okay? So during the time of the year when Mercury is in Gemini, you will see that these are your best ideas, okay? This is your best communication preference. This is your maybe a great opportunity to feel a little bit squirrely with things maybe, and to feel like you're talking really fast or having to communicate a lot. But there's a really good ability to orient your mind and calibrate your mind while Mercury is in Gemini or Virgo. Mercury also is a ruler of Virgo. So Gemini and Virgo, 2 mutable signs. This means that Mercury is a mutable planet. It is all about shifts. It's all about transitions. It's all about the change and the mutability of certain energies in life. So to jump straight into the intro to Mercury, this planet is very tied to humans. So humans are quite mercurial beings, actually. The center of our energy source is actually quite mercurial. We are very electric beings with very complex nervous systems, very complex autonomic and peripheral nervous systems. So there are a lot of signals that happen inside the human body, obviously coming from the brain and our central nervous system and then out to the peripheral nervous system. These are all mercurial concepts, and somewhat Uranian concepts as well, as Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So there is a similarity between Uranus energy and Mercury energy, but still some very valid differences as well. For those of you who have a good understanding of Uranus energy in astrology, you could consider Mercury to be its starting point. So Uranus as a baby was Mercury, essentially. Mercury is the beginning point for a Uranus. And what it deals with is a lot of communication. It deals with how we help others to understand or make others understand certain things. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, all the mythology around Mercury, with the flying shoes and everything, and the movement and the transportation and bringing messages to certain places. Humanity is very much in a Mercurial and Uranian phase right now, with the technological revolution, with advent of modern science and modern information technology. We are actually truly evolving through the energy of Mercury and to a lesser degree Uranus right now. So it's interesting to think about, and that is why the Mercury retrogrades are some of the most prominent ones for us as people, and it affects every single person regardless of your natal chart. It's because humanity is really evolving and working through the energy of Mercury right now. You might kind of see that you feel very uncomfortable if you don't feel like you can communicate your truth, for example. If you don't feel like people understand how you feel about something or how you have experienced life, if you feel that other people don't understand it, that is one of the most difficult things for humans to deal with right now. Not feeling like other people understand, not feeling like other people have been communicated the truth or the reality of what you or someone else has been through. So that is like a launching point for where we're at right now. And that is Mercury energy. And it is the energy of Mercury that becomes that sort of communication point. It's like this third-party energy that takes a truth or, a statement from inside one being and puts it into another, okay? It's collective. It's like a collective consciousness. When you communicate to somebody in your life, a family member, a spouse, a child, and you say, okay, do the dishes, or you say, I'm not feeling too well, you're using Mercury energy in that moment, because that person, without you communicating that, would never know it. And essentially, this is the way that humanity is like a collective and can orient itself to move as one in more than one, is with the energy of Mercury. Again, it's a little miniature Uranus. So this is very 11th house, and this is very much Uranus energy as well. It's dealing with collectives. And Mercury is not so much the ruler of these collectives. Again, that's Uranus, but it's the energy that is used, or the archetype that comes into play when individuals within collectives communicate with others, then communicate with others, then so on and so forth to create a certain consciousness, okay? And then it evolves and elevates into 11th house Uranus energy once that collective consciousness becomes an entity of itself or within itself. So every single time that you talk, every single time that you click on a YouTube video, what I'm communicating to you right now, these things that you know now, this is a mercurial construct. And it's one of humanity's main points of focus right now, and for the last about 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, really, which I think is actually a little bit more than 200 years, about like 250 years or 260 years, yeah. So for the last 260 years, we've really been trying to work with Mercury energy. So within an individual, their Mercury energy, where their Mercury is placed, or how it is tied up within their chart, this is going to really detail a person's mental process. This is going to detail how formulaic a person is, how constant or pattern creating somebody is, or how inconsistent or non-adhering to a pattern somebody may be. It's going to show how someone does or doesn't play mind games with others in their lives, how good of a communicator or how efficient or inefficient of a communicator somebody might be, and those potentials in their lives. It's going to show, just how someone's nervous system health is to a degree as well. How healthy someone could be, because the nervous system is really the starting point for all aspects of health within the human body, and that's what astrology shows us, as Mercury is the first planet away from the sun and creates the nervous system. It shows that our central nervous system, which is the sun, and then our peripheral nervous system, which to a lesser degree Mercury, and then all the way out there Uranus, these things are the first point of health within the human body, and perhaps within all bodies on this planet. And what that means is that your Mercury placement is going to really detail the health of your body to a degree. It doesn't mean that you can't have health issues coming from another part of the body that have nothing to do with the nervous system, but the nervous system is going to show your patience, your concentration. It's going to show, how efficient of a breather you are, and how much sleep you need, and how much, how your fight or flight system response works, and how nervous or calm you are. All of those things are going to tie back to the nervous system, and we can see that within the placement of Mercury in a birth chart. Mercury also, to a degree, deals with instant instincts. So like the instincts that are inborn, to a degree, deal with Mercury and how those are communicated in a collective consciousness. So the knowledge not to look directly into the sun, certain fight or flight reflexes are going to deal with the mental processes and the Mercury energy as well. So you can see how much somebody relies on their instincts as a person, or their gut feelings, by seeing their Mercury placement to a degree. But this is also the moon as well in Pluto, when it comes to like the emotional instincts, like and those instincts that we feel so deep in our gut. Those are more like moon and Pluto. But these more instant, higher conscious level instincts, like don't look directly into the sun, don't play with a snake, things like that. Those are like very mercurial instincts. So Mercury within somebody's chart is also going to show how analytical they are, perhaps how investigative they are, the reflexes that somebody has as well. So our nervous system and our reflexes, but then also our other kinds of reflexes as well, how we respond to certain stimulus. Some people have a big tolerance for difficult emotional issues and will stay a long time by them, and other people have no tolerance for difficult emotional issues and will just completely leave a difficult emotional setting. This will be seen in the Mercury placement. For example, a lighthearted Mercury in Aries is probably just going to kind of disappear from an emotionally difficult situation and try to find and pioneer a different type of, mental experience or emotional experience. Whereas somebody with like a Mercury in Scorpio may stay for like way too long in difficult emotional circumstances and try to, understand the deeper meaning and try to get more from it. The Mercury sign is really going to show people's loyalty to a degree. Loyalty can actually be seen in Mercury to some degree, just from the sense of like how much somebody can mentally tolerate an experience. And but at a deeper level than that, the Mercury sign is really going to show people's tolerances in general, like what somebody can tolerate, the stimulus somebody can put up with or won't put up with. And you can really see by somebody's Mercury placement how this person wants the stimulus in their life to be. Definitely with the Mercury placement, you can see somebody who has a bit of an addiction to, certain experiences, somebody who always needs to be in an emotionally perplexing environment, for example. You can definitely see that with the Mercury placement, especially if it has a configuration with like Moon and Pluto, for example. Although somebody who always needs to be surrounded by nice, pristine, like glamorous, clean environment, you can see that with maybe a Mercury, Venus, Jupiter configuration. So the Mercury energy is really going to become what we can identify as somebody's mental tolerance, okay? To some degree. And this is the higher level of consciousness. This is the other thing with Mercury. If we're talking consciousness, this is a very, very high level of consciousness. This is not the subconscious. This is not the unconscious. This is not the parts of ourselves that we are unclear on, the parts of our ego or the parts of our deep inner selves that we cannot quite comprehend completely. Not Mercury energy at all. So that needs to be made very clear. Again, these are like Moon, Pluto, Neptune types of constructs, those unconscious, subconscious experiences. Whereas Mercury is going to be the completely conscious. Okay, this is what we know about ourselves. This is what we know of somebody else. This is what we see, what we get, and the very, very much above the lower levels of consciousness, and it's never going to really dip down. Now, if you've got like a Mercury conjunct Pluto, maybe you have a strong connecting point between the upper and lower levels of consciousness, but it does not indicate like a bleed over so much. That would be more, again, that's rare, and astrology would struggle a little bit to completely pinpoint that, but I would say that's more of like a yod with like Neptune and Pluto, and then put in like the moon at a T-square or something. You could get like a bleed off type of thing with a lower and upper level of consciousness. But Mercury is not going to typically like bleed off too much. It's kind of above those things, really. It's a very high up energy, okay? It's not really dipping itself down into the level of the subconscious. Although people with like a very like lower placed Mercury, so say you have like Mercury in the 4th house, for example, you might really want to comprehend lower levels of consciousness. You might want to learn about them. You might be a great psychotherapist, or you might be a psychic. I personally have Mercury in the 4th house, and it has led me here where I'm really trying to articulate these like deeper levels of in this case, astrology, but these are like complexes and aspects of humanity and archetypes as well. So for me, that would be my own Mercury in the 4th house operating and trying to bring that into a higher level of consciousness. But it does not necessarily mean that what I'm getting into here is really necessarily going into a deep level of your consciousness, because again, we are communicating this. We are in a high level of consciousness right now. So yeah, it's kind of a hard explanation there. But we need to remember with Mercury that this is an upper level of consciousness. This is a communicative effort to raise consciousness to some degree. Okay. At a more mundane sense, Mercury also has rulership over short distance travel. As the ruler of Gemini's, your daily errands, your daily, drives, where you're going to every day, commuting to work, things like that. You're in Mercury energy when you're doing that. When you get caught in traffic, or when you, are talking to a client, or talking to your boss in some way, or doing like customer service. You are in Mercury mode 100%. So in that way, with Mercury's rulership over Virgo, we also have like strenuous tasks with Mercury. Daily tasks. We have 6th house energy, so this setting of a routine, the regiments of our lives, the things that we commit to and do every day and are a bit of a grind. You can see that with Mercury, and this is a little bit less talked about with Mercury energy, at least from what I've seen. Where Mercury deals a lot, it's not Saturn. It's not like, the debt, the karmic debt that we establish, or the contracts that we establish to like be liable for something for a long period of time. But it gets a little bit into that vicinity with its connection to the Virgo energy. We're gonna, do all of these tasks that aren't really for our super 9th house Sagittarius high up goals of life, but it's establishing the environment that we can then strive for those things in. So Mercury is also a bit of a cleansing energy in that way too, where it is about kind of setting an environment, setting a regiment, creating a timetable, creating a schedule, creating a calendar, so that we can have this like we can have this space in our lives where we can do bigger things too. So Mercury is in this way communicating to the universe what we want to do in life by setting certain regiments and setting certain routines, and doing certain short distance trips as well, to establish our forward momentum. So Mercury also sets a space. It is a daily, it's like the small choices. Mercury is very much like the small choices in life. Today I'm just going to lay in bed, and that small choice is going to lead me to not really feel like I've, gotten far in my career perhaps, but maybe it will also lead me to feeling healthier, or lead me to think, okay, wow, I've really kind of gone into a depression. And these are like communicating things to not only ourselves, but to maybe to source energy, to the universe, and that impacts our energy at a higher level over time. It's very much the small decisions that create a larger reality for us. So every single day, when you choose to open up social media, or when you get a bit ADD and you like pull out your phone and instead of doing your job, these are all small little mercurial communications that start to create our reality as a whole. So definitely important to think about Mercury when we're thinking about our larger goals. Again, this is not like 9th house like Sagittarius goals, or like 10th house midheaven Capricorn goals. This isn't like, wow, the huge recognition, but these are the little choices that build up to that foster a space in which we can start to then cultivate those things. And when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to achieving 9th house, 10th house things, I think that people lose this a little bit. They kind of want the 9th house and the 10th house before the 3rd house and the 6th house, before Mercury, before Gemini and Virgo. We want that Sag and Capricorn stuff, and the key to really getting that is mastering Mercury energy, okay? Mastering 3rd and 6th house, mastering our immediate relationships, our, sibling or family relationships, our short distance travel, our small decisions, and then also being able to set a routine, having a daily regiment, having a space that is conducive to bigger goals. And then after that space is established and after Mercury energy is adhered to, we then have the communication point, really, okay, to start to go bigger, higher into the horizon. So if you're setting goals, start with Mercury, okay? Don't start with Sag, don't start with Capricorn, don't start with Saturn, don't start with Pluto, don't start, all of those like lofty places, because it will become too psychological, okay? If you're thinking like, wow, let's just think of a hypothetical. I want to be the CEO of a big corporation, or I want to be famous. I want to, go to Hollywood. The key is not to start acting classes, okay? The key is not to, start a company. The key is to master your time. And the key is to create positive relationships and consistency in your life and learn how to do that before these like big lofty things happen. As you might see, as I'm creating this video, we are in a major Capricorn mode, and all of us are seeing that, wow, maybe I wanted to be the CEO before I wanted to master my time, okay? Maybe I wanted to be the famous actor or actress before I ever made any connections, or before I ever made any like effort to cultivate a space that could allow that. And that's where we make dangerous relationships. That's where we get desperate. That's where we find all these things that Mercury energy just loves to go retrograde and create absolute havoc over. So start with Mercury when it comes to goals. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Probably the best thing about this video to understand. And not even just with goals, actually, with everything, because Mercury is the first planet in our solar system. It's closest to the sun. It is the starting point for everything. Okay, so relationships, health, like, you got to call the doctor's office before you come in, hopefully. You've got to, there's got to be communication. You've got to go to the front desk before you get admitted, to the college, or you got to go to the office. You've got to sign forms. Like Mercury is the starting point for everything. And we don't want to bypass it, because then we get into a lot of like issues and a lot of, unknown, uncharted territory. So that's why Geminis and Virgos like do really well in life. I mean, obviously not every single Gemini and Virgo, like they struggle too in their own ways. But if you know like any Geminis, or if you know any Virgos, they have kind of an innate understanding that communication and information is the root of everything. And they always start there. They do it a little bit differently from each other. Like Virgo is very much going to start from the level of like the home and the routine and the cleanliness of the surroundings. And Gemini is more so going to start from like connections and relationships and communication with the people around them. But they both have this great ability, Gemini and Virgo, to start in the right place with things, okay? To not start with, something that's way out of reach, to not overreach, essentially. There are a few signs in the zodiac that can overreach and really cause a lot of like pandemonium and a lot of chaos for themselves by not really starting with Mercury, by not really starting with connections and routine. Right? So not Gemini and Virgo. So if you're having a struggle with your own Mercury energy, you're feeling like, okay, I don't really know how to get where I want to be. It's feeling like a risk. Something is feeling like really way too risky to me. Try to find a Gemini or a Virgo and get some advice from them. They'll probably really help you just by like a kind dialogue. It's not going to be like someone that you hire like a lawyer or something, but like just through having a friendly dialogue with you, you're going to really understand the stability that these two signs have when it comes to starting new things in life. So we're always starting with Mercury when we start anew. Okay. Anyway, I think that that's a pretty good introduction to Mercury. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to go over when it comes to introducing it. Just that it's very fast moving. Okay. So when we're dealing with Mercury energy, we are dealing with quick ideas, quick communication. This isn't something that stretches out. This isn't a long-term thing. You know, when you sign up for college or when you sign up for a new bank account, that's not really the main thing about it. You know, that's quick. You know, we sign up for an account or we sign up for something or we communicate that I would like to do this or that. And that's the quick part. But that puts this huge like chain of command or this huge chain of events into action, which may be really long and drawn out. That's where we get into like Saturn and Pluto and all of those energies. But just remember that Mercury is fast, it's quick, and it's as a planet in astrology, it changes signs really quick. It obviously has the quickest orbit around the sun. Anyway, let's move on to Mercury through the signs. Really exciting. So Mercury in Aries. This is a wonderful placement for Mercury. It's not debilitated, it's not at home, so it's a great middle ground placement for it. This gives Mercury the natural energy of Mars, which is going to make you a very active thinker. I see careers like a first responder, a police officer, fireman, people who have a really quick thinking survival instinct with Mercury and Aries. So your life might need excitement, though. It's going to be really important to make sure that within your mind you are excited about what you're doing, that you're passionate and motivated about the things that you're going to have to take on. As we were saying, Mercury deals with routine. It deals with our day-to-day plans and expectations. So putting that in Aries is going to mean that you're really not going to want to live a boring life, or what you might consider to be a boring life. You might also see that it's pretty easy to get bored with this placement too. So you've got to really put in a lot of effort and emphasis on keeping things exciting in life and keeping things fresh and keeping things moving. If you work a very solid job or very consistent, say it's like 40, 50 hours a week and you're in the same place for all that time, you got to really mix it up. You got to maybe really inject some creativity into your office or something like that. And just something to keep yourself excited and something to look forward to and, have fun with. This also, it just gives a really fun thinking mind. So Mercury and Aries, you have a lot of creativity and a lot of ability to make things more fun. So what might be considered boring or what might be considered strenuous or tedious, you will have a lot of ability to mix those things up and make them more exciting. This can also give a competitive edge to the personality too, and this can be like good or bad sometimes. Like you can be a little bit too competitive for your own good, and it really helps you to get motivated for things, and it helps you to up your game and do things with more efficiency. But I think that it can be a little bit difficult for other people, so watch out for stepping on other people's toes accidentally because of a competitive nature or a need to do things better than others. That's going to be a part of your instinct pattern, is like doing things better or doing things with just a little bit more potency than other people. Okay, again, this is the energy of Mars put onto Mercury, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it can make the mind difficult to turn off. So there is insomnia possible with this placement, or anything that deals with just not being able to get your mind off of things. So it's going to be really important for this Mercury placement to exercise some letting go ability, being able to release, being able to detach and express elsewhere too, really knowing where you want to express, knowing how you want to move forward. Again, Aries is like that yang-oriented forward motion. So putting Mercury there is going to make your mind pretty forward-thinking, and it's going to make your communication style also very expressive and outside of yourself. So not a good Mercury placement for harboring resentment or lying or putting on a mask or not expressing how you truly feel about something. You could get very ill. You could get very uncomfortable in your mind if you feel like you're having to keep quiet about something or feeling like you're forced to not tell the truth. Not a great placement at all for any type of lying or any type of falsity relating to communication, because that tries to redirect the Aries outward yang energy inward, which can result in illness or pain or some type of even like emotional illness or something where there's a depression or something difficult with how your mind is working in an everyday sense. So every day you got to be getting things outside of yourself. You got to be communicating outward. You got to be maybe inspiring motivation or inspiring progress in people around you. A great placement for a leader, okay? A great placement for somebody who delegates or who creates like a workflow outside of themselves, okay? Not so good for somebody who feels like a pawn or who feels like they're being delegated toward. You probably know as a Mercury in Aries that you don't like to be controlled, and you don't like other people to command you or control like your day-to-day events. You want that autonomy. You want perhaps even to be commandeering other people. And that can be a difficult process for Mercury and Aries as they sort of climb the career ladder or they rise up in their lives. They have to understand that they have to learn how to really take orders well and how to be led before they get that leadership position, because there's a big craving for a leadership position with any Mercury placed into a cardinal sign. So again, this is the mind of a leader, or the will and routine of somebody who is in charge or taking charge of other people. So yeah, really good to foster your own strategic thinking. Again, your axis is Aries Libra, so it indicates a need to really look at the chessboard of your life, to really be thinking ahead and to be thinking in a balanced way. Watch out for polarized thinking, like being on different sides of the bed every single day, or if you're leading a team, or if you're helping other people, watch out for thinking that they need to go super far this way, and then the next day we're totally taking that back and going the other way. It can be a bit erratic, okay? The mind can be a bit erratic. The planning process, the decision-making process, the communication process can be really fast and erratic. If you notice, as I'm getting into the Mercury and Aries energy, it's a lot faster. It's like a little bit jittery energy. Jittery isn't the right word. It's just very energetic. So slow it down, Mercury and Aries. Keep yourself calm, keep yourself tranquil, and try to motivate yourself with very authentic and non-volatile goals or progressions. All right, really good placement though. Not a bad placement at all. Okay, Mercury in Taurus. So Mercury placed into a Venus sign. It's going to be so important for this placement to feel that their interior space is comfortable. Okay, Taurus is a sign that rules comfort, it rules stability, and it's fixed. So Mercury placed into the fixed signs can be a little bit tough. So Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. These are not specifically debilitated placements for Mercury, but I do notice a bit of difficulty here. This is a very stubborn placement. So if you're like knowing a Mercury in Taurus personally or dating a Mercury in Taurus, do know that it's going to be difficult to change their way of thinking, or it's going to be difficult to control these people. Mercury placed into a fixed sign makes a very hard-headed type of energy, and especially in Taurus. So these people know themselves, they know what they're about, they know what they're going toward, and they're not easily going to be interrupted from their momentum. And I think that there is a bit of a karmic issue there for Mercury and Taurus about the fragility of their current momentum, or the fragility of their expression. It's not very fragile, okay? It's very tough, it's very hard. And how has it become so? I think that Mercury on this axis of Taurus and Scorpio does indicate some emotional discomfort, especially early in childhood, as Mercury in this sign does deal with the way the mind is shaped in early childhood, as Taurus is like a toddler into early childhood time. So there's a hardening of this person early in life, like very early experiences become hardening. And also, oftentimes, the parental structure kept them young for a long time. So you can see the teenager or even the young adult who is still being treated like a child by the parents, because this energy can feel quite childish, actually. And same with Mercury and Aries, too. Mercury and Aries, Taurus, and Gemini can be a very youthful, even childlike demeanor. So what it means for Mercury and Taurus, though, is that people like you when you're acting youthful, okay? And at the same time, they might kind of hold over your head, you need to be mature, you need to grow up and things like that. And there's this like weird tug of war that Mercury and Taurus gets about their age and about how that is impacting their immediate family and their groups and their processes in life. So one of the first big karmic wounds or karmic issues that come up in a Mercury and Taurus is how am I feeling comfortable in my communication with my immediate people or the people who are immediately around me? Because that might not feel very comfortable at certain times. And that for that reason, this Mercury sign can indicate solitude or isolation to some degree until they can get a little bit more comfortable with how they feel toward themselves and really work with their own age and work with their own identity as well. So this axis of Taurus and Scorpio with Mercury is going to deal a lot with identity, because in the second house, which is the house that Taurus rules, this is introducing us to how we receive, how we are given, how we are fed in our life. And Mercury is going to really orient our mind as like, what am I getting out of this? How am I receiving? Like, what is this really giving me? For this reason, you can see I wouldn't call it flightiness, because again, they're very loyal, Mercury and Taurus. They're very committed, but in the mind, they can actually be like, whoa, what am I actually getting from this? Am I actually getting anything out of this? Is this all just spinning my wheels? There are a lot of internal dialogues that deal with, where am I getting? Where is this taking me? And they can kind of undermine themselves if they're not careful, okay? Especially if there's a weird T-square with this placement or any type of configuration with the outer planets that is more harsh. I see this placement to be like very committed on the outside, but on the inside, it's a bit of turmoil. Like, where is it getting me? What am I doing? Is this going to give me comfort in my life? There is a bit of an obsession with comfort and an obsession with feeling softness and feeling like there's no unexpected things happening. So this axis, Taurus, Scorpio of Mercury, can breed a control freak as well if they're not careful. So they have to really work on control dynamics where the Mercury in Taurus is not forcing a certain environment for itself and others and really getting outside of the truth that life is not predictable or completely controllable. Mercury in Taurus and Mercury in Scorpio, okay, both have to really, really work on the unpredictability of life and accepting that at a deeper level and understanding that there are unexpected events in life, and those do have an impact on our comfort as people, and all we can do is then adjust to them. This Mercury sign will struggle just a tad with adjustment or anything that deals with assuaging to other people, or it's kind of like my way or the highway. It's all or nothing. It's in or out. It's kind of black or white. And it really teaches the people around it. Okay, the Mercury and Taurus person will really be a huge teacher for everyone around it about how they give to other people or about how they have an impact on the momentum of people around them. There's this kind of mirrored experience with a Mercury and Taurus where the Mercury and Taurus has come into the experience to be given or to be, submissive in some way. And then the people around them start to learn a lot of lessons about how they're impacting or affecting or cultivating or controlling the people around them. So any placement of like Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, these signs do indicate that the people that are in the lives of them, especially with the Mercury placement, the karma almost becomes about them and not even so much about the person whose Mercury sign is placed here. So that's the pain of this placement, is that they come into people's lives and it's like all about them, or if they start a relationship or a friendship, it's like all about the Mercury and Taurus, but then in the long run it ends up like never really being about them, and the people who are in their lives like end up trying to like really commandeer the entire karmic implication of everything and trying to like give prescribe a certain story to the Mercury and Taurus. and it's not really the right story. And here we have Mercury and Taurus being given, okay, something that's not really right, especially if Neptune's involved. So there's a lot of weird stories for this placement dealing with what they're given, or like the mental infrastructure or emotional stories of the relationships around them and the communication patterns around them. And Mercury and Taurus has to learn how to speak, okay? Taurus is the throat chakra, it rules the voice. Mercury in Taurus has to learn how to speak its truth and to not just accept all of these stories and patterns that other people fix for them. Because worst case scenario, this is the person who has like a reputation or a story built by 5 or 10 other people that have nothing to do with who this person actually is, and then they start adhering to it and accepting it as their normal, and you sort of have a person whose personality is completely Venus and completely like not really anything real. It's a bit inanimate, okay? So this can create a bit of an inanimate personality if the Mercury in Taurus cannot speak and tell people off, or tell people like, this is my story, this is what I'm doing, and if you can't be okay with that, then it's my way or the highway, I'm going to go on. It can't stagnate itself in situations where other people are trying to control it or trying to create a reality for it. And once it comes out of any type of desperation to, just be given by other people, then Mercury in Taurus can really become a voice for many people, or a voice for, a sort of a collective as well. It's a very good collective voice with this energy, and the voice is very powerful. The voice is where everything comes from. Great for public speaking, great for even like politics or something that deals with anything that you have to use your voice to really do well in, singing, acting, all that type of stuff for Mercury and Taurus. So interesting placement. Okay, Mercury in Gemini. So Mercury absolutely loves to be placed in Gemini. This is its home sign. And why does it love Gemini so much? Because Gemini is so mutable, so adaptive, so quick thinking. It is one of the only signs, other than Virgo, that can really mirror and hold up to the quick changing nature of Mercury. So Gemini is constantly shifting, moving, finding new perspectives, finding new conclusions, finding all these new things. Like it's like a squirrel, actually Mercury rules squirrels as well. So if you watch a squirrel, it's kind of like twitchy and it's moving really fast and it has like really great reflexes. And then sometimes if you've ever had a squirrel run out in front of your car, it gets so connected into all of the different possibilities of which direction it could go that it just goes back and forth and gets run over. This placement has to watch out for this, okay? Mercury and Gemini, you have to be very careful about finding so many perspectives and so many different potential paths that you just go back and forth in a busy highway, over and over again. This sign can get stuck in this perpetual story of going back and forth and continuing that job, then quitting that job, continuing that job, then quitting that job. And there's like a back and forth with this, and it's not bad. It's not necessarily dangerous, but you have to really, as a Mercury and Gemini, understand your momentum and understand where you want to be and where you want to get, so that you don't get stuck in these processes going back and forth over and over again. You have a very strong mind as Mercury in Gemini. You have a very quick reflex, a very healthy nervous system. Okay, so the typically this can depend on other placements too. The central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system are very well calibrated in Mercury and Gemini, giving that ability for you to, just switch perspectives so quickly and switch even paradigms or realities so quickly. And it does take a toll after a while, which is why you want to be able to focus this energy into a very lofty place. Again, this is the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. So Mercury in Gemini eventually is going to want to take these ideas and these capabilities into something lofty, or into, a higher office or some type of philosophical or academic level, or high corporate level or something like that. But it doesn't really start there. The energy of this doesn't start there. The energy of Mercury and Gemini is really more mundane, and it's more daily. It's more like, where are you going every day? What short distance trips are you taking? How are you reacting with friends and siblings and things like that? And how do they have an impact on the higher arching parts of your story? You have to really get a mastery over these things as a Mercury and Gemini before you start to try to elevate up and before you start to try to take things to this like huge level. So yes, as a Mercury and Gemini, you want to try and simplify things as much as possible. It's like a formula. It's like a math problem. You're trying to make it more basic. You're trying to sort of investigate and get to the bottom of things. So it can also be a good placement for an investigator or somebody who is looking through a lot of different things to come to a conclusion. So I really like Mercury and Gemini, and I think that it also denotes some like good mental health and good emotional health as well, as long as you can stay committed and focused on the path that you are on. So yeah, Mercury and Gemini. Okay, Mercury in Cancer. So this is where the mind gets emotional in Mercury's progression. We start to see a bit of a consolidation between the emotional mind and the practical mind with Mercury in Cancer. There's really, really good instincts with this placement. These people have a great, honed gut feelings, and they have to really connect their gut feelings to their higher consciousness when it comes to Mercury in Cancer. That's really the goal for them. You might see as a Mercury in Cancer that you have certain gut feelings that, some of them are spot on, and then some of them don't really pan out. Like you'll feel worried about someone and they end up not really posing a threat, or you feel worried about a certain progression that you're in and it ends up doing you really well. And this kind of spotlights the shifting that this Mercury sign does. For example, like a Mercury in Cancer comes in to an experience and they feel like it's off, or they feel like there's something not right. And just by their presence, they can kind of actually change it and fix it and make it something that's good. So it's not that those gut feelings that you get are wrong as a Mercury in Cancer, but a lot of times you're going to be pulled towards maybe eerie feeling or difficult feeling experiences just to be the catalyst to clean them up or to make them more clear, because people really benefit from your communication. People really benefit from the words of a Mercury in Cancer. Even if it's not great words, there's something about the communication of a Mercury in Cancer that really helps people to feel nurtured and really helps people to feel safe. So you can really, as a Mercury in Cancer, make somebody feel very safe, even through not trying that hard, just through speaking to somebody or just through communicating with them. You are very helpful to their sense of well-being. One issue with this Mercury sign is that it can be prone to changing its mind a lot. Again, this is Mercury in the sign of the moon, which is the energy of ebb and flow and constant change, constant view on certain things. So the viewpoints can shift up a lot with this placement. And what I usually see with Mercury in Cancer is that there is a really big transformation of outlook, as they move through their life. So definitely like a person who might be born as an Amish person, and then by the time they're 40 years old, they're living as a New York stockbroker or something. A huge change in outlook on life and a huge change in value spectrum, usually with this Mercury placement. And even if they didn't have the change, let's say they born and died Amish, throughout that time of being Amish, they would have had maybe a huge shift on how they felt about it or what their outlook was on it. This is not the type of person who is born with a certain values and necessarily maintains those values forever. There is a lot of discretion, I think, with this placement, and a lot of kind of turning things inside out as well, really thinking about topics and really thinking about things that are the way that they are, certain status quo. Again, this is the Cancer-Capricorn axis, so we're dealing with the traditional, with the family roots, with the status quo structured aspects of life, and with the ebbing flow energy of the moon and Cancer, with the energy of Mercury, it creates this want to really see things from every single perspective and to really understand what went into something. I think this is definitely the type of person who might buy a bottle of water at the store, and the bottle of water will sit on their desk and they'll think, what really went into making that? Where did that plastic come from? what is the source of that water? And by the time that 5 minutes has passed with that bottle of water on their desk, the Mercury in Cancer has maybe decided to never drink bottled water again, or they've shifted their entire outlook on a certain industry or on a certain manufacturing just by having purchased the bottle of water. So some people can find this a little bit annoying, and some people, here's the thing about Mercury in Cancer, or like Mercury in the fourth house energy, people, it can be a bit know-it-all. It can be a bit, because it's very smart, like this is like really good like computation ability. It's, again, it's Mercury right after Gemini. It's a great placement for Mercury in Cancer, but sometimes these people are too smart for their own good too, and they understand things too quickly. Like, for example, you might just be dating somebody, or you might make a friend, and you can look at that person just like you looked at the bottle of water and see, okay, that's where that person came from. That's the origin of what they're trying to do. That's what they're doing here. And it might be so quick, like within a matter of 5 minutes of speaking to somebody as a Mercury in Cancer, you could understand their entire backstory, or you could understand the entirety of their like current emotional state and the momentum that they have. Or you'll think that you do, okay? You'll think that you totally understand them. And people can sense this. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people can sense when somebody is around them who, for lack of a better word, is like a know-it-all or something, or is kind of holding this like high posture of maybe even being just a little bit above people. It's not the same as like Mercury in Leo. We're about to get into that. But Mercury in Cancer is not really above. It's not the right word, but it is like very assured of how it knows things, and sometimes can be a little bit difficult to convince from an outside perspective. So Mercury in Cancer is always finding its conclusions on the inside, and unless it's like a parent or a very close family member, it's difficult for Mercury in Cancer to be convinced of anything by anybody. It's, again, a very stubborn placement. And again, as to follow up on what I was just talking about, it's like right when you meet somebody, Mercury in Cancer can tend to have less friends, okay? Less relationships, less acquaintances. They are more homebodies, and they're more drained by having lots and lots of like stimulation by people they don't know too well, because they always have to do this with their mind. They have to like know somebody inside out very quickly, and this is very draining for them. So yeah, there can be social anxiety with this placement. There can be like working from home is obviously indicated, because usually like a public workplace for Mercury in Cancer is like very difficult for them to cope with, and for that reason, like they make a friend like once every few years or something, or the good friends that they have in their lives are probably super long running old friends, because they just really don't hold an energy that is very conducive to meeting new people, or very conducive to dating, or very conducive to really opening up to people. It's a bit walled off. It's a bit in the shell. People don't know you very well, Mercury in Cancer. This is another thing that I would like to bring to your attention, and I love to be learning about this placement, is it's really coming through strongly. Okay, so this is actually a sign of Mercury that needs a lot of healing at this time in this current paradigm. People don't know you too well. I think that your mind is quite reserved. I think you really reserve a lot of communication, and you're very polite, and you're very focused on making things good for other people while not committing too much to them. And this makes people not really know you, and it makes people not really understand what your goals are, or it's like they just feel like you're too far above it. Like maybe you come off like kind of like a socialite, or kind of like somebody who has a lot of status. Again, this is Mercury between its home of Gemini and between the really flashy Leo, so there's a comfort point of being well off, but like not too narcissistic with things, and not too like flashy. So this is kind of like an energy of nobility as well, and an energy of comfort, at least, or somebody. It's not really nobility. It's more like I don't know, somebody who's done well, like just well enough to be above common problems, but not quite born or found themselves quite well enough to be like in the ruling class or in the 1% or something. This is like the energy of like upper middle class, essentially. And Mercury doesn't really deal with this type of things. I'm just trying to help you to understand the personification. Again, maybe these people are very poor or very rich, but this is the vibe that they give off to people, is sort of like this in-between lofty vibe that is still humble and still connected to ordinary experiences, but not quite there, and also not quite like, fabulously wealthy or over the top either. So it's a weird middle ground for people, and they can't quite comprehend it. They don't quite understand what's going on. And once they do come into your super, super personal space, Mercury in Cancer, you are so popular and you are so loved. But it's almost like a Mercury in Cancer has to get people back to their house or back to their lair, I don't know, for people to really understand them. It's like when you meet people in public, or when you meet people in a super, super common space, they do like you. Okay, you're popular, you're sought after by people, but they also can't really engage it. Like there's a wall there. There's something, again, it's the shell, it's the crab shell, Cancer energy. They might be polite to you, you might be polite to them, but that's about the breadth, it feels to me, of your like social experience. And there's a really strong demand, especially over like the next decade, as we get into this Aquarius time out of the Capricorn energy, because that's also been maybe happening because of all the Capricorn that we've had, Pluto in Capricorn over the last, 12 years. So as that goes into Aquarius, once we get into like 2022 and 2023, up towards there, you will start to feel like you can connect more with people, Mercury in Cancer. And that's going to come through cultivating trust within yourself, that you can show yourself more to people. I don't really feel like you really show yourself or communicate your truth to people easily. You don't lie. Again, honesty is very important to you, but there's a politeness or a custom. It's more of a custom that I feel that you have that does prevent yourself from being communicated very well, and that keeps you tied into the past, with family, with old friends, and it kind of keeps things not too fresh. So try to watch out for having one foot in and one foot out of experiences. Watch out for being on the fence with things, kind of stagnating at the crossroads, things like that. I can see that with this placement when it's struggling. And then once it really raises its vibration up, we have an incredible cardinal, precise, refined, laser focusing mind that can really solve any problems, especially when it comes to like family or resources or ancestry or lineage, things passed down, and how those can cultivate a better future. Like honestly, the best thing for Mercury in Cancer would be to like inherit a family business, or to rebuild a family community or something where it's not even about individuals, it's more about instilling a sense of like legacy, and it's not too personalized. I feel like this would be really good territory for Mercury in Cancer, because that sort of polite sense of refinement that they have could become more of a community channeling than something that's too personalized. And then they've channeled it there, and they can kind of let that wall down in their more personal life. That feels best to me for this placement. And obviously not everybody's circumstances are like that, but if you can think along those lines, like what can I channel this refinement into that is maybe not so personalized, and then how can I have done that so I don't feel like I have to do it in every single personal relationship. Okay, Mercury in Leo. So Mercury in Leo, it's, Mercury in Leo thinks a lot of itself. So after Mercury in Cancer, we completely developed the self in relation to the mental processes. Mercury in Cancer presented just a touch of a challenge when it came to how am I integrating myself into my communication, and how am I integrating myself? Again, there was a blockage there. So Mercury in Leo, we've healed from that blockage, and now we have integrated the self into the communication process. So first and foremost, again, this is not debilitated. This is an okay placement for Mercury, but got to really watch out for narcissism, either within or around you, okay? Very, very likely that you've been raised by a narcissist, or you've had constant affiliation with narcissistic people. Again, this placement is a magnet for narcissists, because this Mercury sign has an ability to really, really encourage people. So this is a great like cheerleader. This is a great kind of like Mercury and Sag as well. All the Mercury fire signs are very optimistic, and they communicate with hope and with optimism for the future. And Mercury in Leo, you probably from quite a young age, you might have had this taken advantage of just a little bit, where people might have really fed off of that energy, or really required you to build them up and make them strong. And again, usually I see a parental figure with this placement, especially if Saturn is nearby or in a harsh aspect. There's usually a parental figure that is extremely narcissistic, or just required the Mercury and Leo person to convince them of everything and to spin everything for them. You know, for example, like the single parent who's working but hates their job, and they go to their child and they're like, gosh, I just hate this job. Can you please help me like this job more? And then the Mercury and Leo's having to give pep talks or having to, you know, encourage the parent to do their job. And it creates like this dynamic that Mercury and Leo has with most people in their lives, where they're kind of a fixer. Again, Mercury and the fixed signs, these are the fixers, the people who are mentally trying to understand how to fix things, how to keep other people stable, how to, you know, keep things in order and create status quo. So Mercury and Leo has to really do that through their ability to motivate others and their ability to communicate inspiration and communicate motivation. So this is a great placement for a motivational speaker, you know, for a pop star or for a singer-songwriter who does motivational songs, or for a salesperson. I think this person could sell ice to an Eskimo, because again, the strongest talent with Mercury and Leo is the ability to play something up, okay? The ability to really put some wind behind something and really make something big, really make something regal. Again, this is a regal placement. The speaking, you might speak with like a very royal tone, or you might even unknowingly be speaking with the accent, like the most posh accent, or the most you know, you might sound like a ruler. And you know, if you've got a Pluto Saturn configuration or something tough with this placement, it can be a bit ruthless, okay? This can be a bit of a ruthless placement as well, where as somebody grows and as somebody matures and they get older and they've had to build other people up for all their life and they've had to keep other people stable for their entire life, this is definitely like the person who can start to get very mean, okay, and ruthless, and be very kind to someone's face, but then tear them down behind their back, or you know, really, really criticize people, not to their face, okay, because this placement really struggles to be mean to people's face. Like, this is not a sign or not a placement that wants to ever make people feel bad directly, okay? But there can be like spite that grows with this placement if they've had to really build other people up way too much. There can be like resentment and contention with this too, because it really makes like this sense of pressure in the mind and this heat, again, this is fixed fire energy in the mind, hard to get the mind off of certain things. If this placement gets angry, or if this placement gets you know, upset, it's really hard to let go of that. It's really hard to just exhale it. So yeah, anger management with this placement could be vital. And if it's not anger management, some kind of spiritual practice or some kind of coaching even, that helps this person to learn how to let go and release that sense of anger that won't go away inside. You know, that's the difficult part of Mercury and Leo, is it's an angry disposition in the mind, I won't lie. And it does not take well to being denied anything either. Again, this is the sign of the king with the mind, so this is like a kingly mind. This is a ruthless mind sometimes. And if it's not getting what it wants, it's going to make things difficult for people who are not giving it what it wants. And then if those people don't come to those terms, there's consequences. You know, that's kind of how this sign can think, and it has to really be careful of this, because I see a lot that Mercury and Leo pulls a lot of like Scorpios in, lots of Plutonian energy coming into Mercury and Leo's life, so we can get some really, really spider web type of experiences coming in, where there's contention and deceit and manipulation and gaslighting and narcissism all wrapping up around each other and creating these very complex knots in the energy. And the Mercury and Leo can get a bit brash and a bit quick with things, and it's going to be like, you know, off to the tower, or I'm not having my needs met, I'm just going to push this away. And with all these knots that get built, it can really undo itself if it's not careful. So that's, you know, we've come through the tough side of Mercury and Leo. Once this sign can let go of these angry experiences, once this sign cannot overcommit itself to people who are narcissists or manipulators or struggling energetically, you get a super, super majestic experience of life and lots of fanfare, lots of popularity. I mean, people love this placement. People will automatically show you deference. It's a good placement for leadership as long as it's not being too ruthless. I mean, not always a good placement for leadership, but it's prone to leadership. We'll say that at least. But it's a bit of tyrannical as well if it's not careful. So it just really has to make sure that it's balancing its decision-making process with the opinions of others, because it's definitely seen for what it is too. It's not a very hidden energy of Mercury. Like, if this energy is ruthless, like, people are gonna see it and people are gonna call it out. If this energy is kind and if this energy is giving, people are gonna see that and people are going to play that up, you know? Like, you do something kind and charitable and all of a sudden you have this reputation all around town of being very kind and charitable. You might see that your reputation with Mercury and Leo gets communicated really quickly. Okay, you have a reputation and that is going to always be there. This is like the energy of reputation, especially if it's above the horizon near the midheaven or something. If it's below the horizon, it might have more to do with your inner circle or family, and less to do with public reputation. But there's always some connection to public with this placement. Like, you might feel like you can only communicate well in public, or you can only communicate well to the people around you. I think that what this sign would do really well with is acting, okay? Some kind of drama, some kind of theater, to where they can like play roles or shift into roles where they can get some of this anger out, like playing like an angry character or a ruthless character, or playing like a king or something in a play or in a like a theater or something like that. This would be really great for this placement because it needs a bit of catharsis, I think. And it needs to get it needs to kind of live stories that have taken like a long time for other people to cultivate, and just be able to be placed into it immediately. There's a bit of instant gratification, I think, with this placement, just a touch, where it needs to express this like incredible fixed fire energy in a very seen way. This sign needs to be seen. This Mercury sign needs for its talents to be exposed to other people so that it can cultivate itself even further, because that's what this Mercury sign is preparing for. We're preparing for Mercury in Virgo, which is the penultimate cultivation, okay, and where we have refined and found this perfect sense of balance and had this acumen of really being seen for being very regimented and very capable at what we've done. So Mercury in Leo is setting the stage for that. So these people want to be seen as capable, and they want to be seen as effective and efficient and in charge to a degree as well, because it's aspiring toward Mercury in Virgo. So Mercury in Leo, try to be happy with who you are and what you have. There is a lot of power and capability in who you are and what you have. Try to not be too grass is greener on the other side, or too attached to things that you don't have yet, and start to enjoy the role that you are creating in your life and really step into that. And if you're not satisfied with it, you have a great capacity to create something new. Yes, it's not really about creating new things, but there's a great ability to fill in the blanks and to fill in the, if you think I set a goal here, the goal is this, and then here's me accomplishing the goal 2 years later. Mercury in Leo can fill in that space really well. But you might want to have some insight or some communication with other people about what the goal is and where you're starting from, because that's kind of the issue with Mercury in Leo. But once it understands where it's starting from and what the goal is, it can fill things in really well, and it can really accomplish the process of goal reaching. So that's really where this sign shines or flourishes. So really great to be, I don't know, like the assistant of a politician or something, or the assistant of a CEO, someone who can help people fill in the blanks. And then as Mercury in Leo, you might want to be the politician, or you might want to be the CEO, and that could work too, but you would need like a good team of people to really make sure that you're seen right for it. So how you're seen, big deal for Mercury and Leo. Lots of karma about how you're seen, how you're taken in, how your reputation is created. Try to not worry too much about it. I mean, I think that can be a bit worrisome, like, oh no, my life is all about how other people see me. It's not that it's about how other people see you, but it's about how you see yourself based on how other people see you. That's where the thing is for Mercury and Leo. It's the 5th house, so this is about popularity and animal magnetism to a degree. Leo is the ruler of the 5th house. So your mind is really trying to comprehend itself through the popularity and animal magnetism that you create to other people. So there's a bit of complicated things there. And where are you, Mercury and Leo? You know, where are you in all of that? Try to think about that and try to start to enjoy fostering that, okay, without succumbing to any of these narcissistic patterns that other people have probably had in your life, like, here I am, you know, and that's all that will ever matter. You know, it's true. we only all have free will and autonomy over ourselves. But there's a level of that that's ego and a level of that that's real, and you got to get into the real point of that, Mercury and Leo. So thank you so much. I think that it's a great sign. It's super popular, super fun. Okay, moving on to Mercury in Virgo. So really, really wonderful energy for Mercury. It is at home in Virgo like it is in Gemini. And I think that Mercury in Virgo really is so oriented with its own wants and desires and capable of methodically fulfilling them. This is a great, great placement for any karma relating to getting onto a track and accomplishing a goal that comes from really deep inside. There's a really great orientation in this placement with aspiration and goals and keeping them realistic, keeping them within scope and being able to accomplish them. So if you've got this placement, you have some good karma, you have some good energy coming in, because probably in many past lifetimes or throughout your own past, you might have felt like you really had to work for other people, or really you had to labor or prepare or do a lot of grunt work for other people. And now you have a chance as Mercury and Virgo to really come into a path or a linear focus that is so in conjunction with your own soul's energy and your own soul's experiences. So great, great opportunity to feel fulfilled with this placement. There is a lot of activity in the mind, though. You know, there can be obsessive compulsive disorder with this if the energy falls too low, perfectionism, striving too hard, overworking on something, spending too much energy on something that should be simple, making something simple too complex. That's definitely possible with this placement, but I mean, it's not so typical. It's just if it's maybe caught up in a difficult configuration, or if the person doesn't feel that they've come into contact with the correct goal, things can start to get odd. But there's always a really great ability for Mercury and Virgo to work through its routine and work through its regiment in life. I'm always talking about this on my channel. The sixth house and Virgo energy is where we acclimate ourselves and join what we want and who we are at a deep level with the outside world. It's the horizon level. It's where we emerge into publicity to some degree. So we have to take what we have inside and put it out. And Virgo is that bridge. It's that meeting point. So putting Mercury there, the mental processes, the communication style, this is a great liaison. Okay. This is a great, communicator, somebody who works in public communications, somebody who is a public speaker, really, really great because they can communicate ideas. So even like venture capitalists or people who are entrepreneurs as well will very much benefit from this placement because they can actually communicate what they're feeling. And not many people can do that well. So Mercury deals with how we communicate, and putting it in Virgo gives it the ability to really articulate anything and to really get anything out. Another issue or problem area for Mercury and Virgo, what would I say? I think that it can be a bit frugal as well, or it can really hold back and play things safe, as it wants more than anything to keep a level of comfort. It's not even comfort, it's just predictability, okay? Some amount of control. There can be control freak with this energy too much emphasis on control and perfectionism. And for that reason, they can deny certain opportunities, or they can hold themselves back a little bit just because they want things to be safe, narrow, and predictable, especially if there's like a lot of Capricorn placements or Cancer placements. So Mercury and Virgo, it has to know when an opportunity has come, okay? And if there's a lot of Sagittarius or Aries, they'll be really good at that. But Mercury and Virgo can sometimes prevent itself from taking certain opportunities. And maybe that's not so bad. I mean, they really continue in that regiment, but I think it's a great placement for taking opportunities, and I think it's a great placement for aiming high, because it usually accomplishes what it sets out for. So really good placement. I don't have much difficult to talk about with it. Just keep things calm, keep things tranquil, avoid being a workaholic too much, avoid restless mind, anything like that. And you should be able to, because again, Mercury in a home sign shows good health in the autonomic nervous system. So the electricity of the body should be well enough calibrated with this placement. So you should be able to shut your mind off if you want to. But the question is, do you want to shut it off? Do you want it to be calm and more tranquil? If you want it, you should be able to get it pretty easily. Okay, moving on to Mercury in Libra. All right. Mercury in Libra, it's a good placement. It's a very, this is a good placement for a lawyer, good placement for a strategist, good placement for an analyst or something, because always weighing the decisions, the mercurial communication style is all in Libra. So these people are really good at seeing both sides of a story. So good for a lawyer because they would be able to completely comprehend the three sides to every story that they're working with. Good for a journalist as well, or good for a judge or someone who is having to constantly make decisions, because this is like the energy of decisions. This placement has two very stark components. Either you have the person who's like very judicial, the person who is, very technical and very also accomplished, and, the lawyer essentially, or you have the person who's like love blind as well, because Libra is a Venus sign. So when you put the energy of Venus into Mercury, you get somebody who's very focused on having the perfect relationship or the perfect marriage. And they will really be seeking that out. So this person might be a bit addicted to other people. This is the energy of the 7th house. So it's the person opposite to you, the person or people who you are trying to communicate with. So putting Mercury there means that this person might lose track of themselves just a little bit. They might get a little bit disconnected from the self, or a little bit too attached to other people's thoughts, kind of like Mercury in Leo. This is a similar energy-ish, kind of a similar energy, just in the fact that they get really attached to reputation and attached to how they've come off to other people, and that can be a bit of a blockage for how they actually feel about themselves. Mercury in Libra might really ascertain its own value by its relationship status, okay? Or by its marriage status, or the wealth that's being gained from a marriage, the profitability of a marriage. Things like that are going to be very highly ranked for this person. Or it's going to be their own income, or their own job status, or the weight of their own place in hierarchy. It's one of the two. It's either very unemotional and very like career oriented and money oriented, or it's very relationship oriented. And they can kind of sway back and forth at different periods of their life. So Mercury in Libra, one thing that I'll say about it that's kind of different from the grain of general opinion about Mercury in Libra, there's usually something like really overwhelming that happens to them at some point in time, and I'm sure that any Mercury in Libra can relate to this. I mean, everybody has something overwhelming happen to them. Let me be a bit more specific. Like things that TV shows are about, like something really like shocking, like a scandal of some kind, or something that most people don't seem to have to deal with, because this is Mercury getting prepared to go into Scorpio as well, where we get into a much different tone of mercurial energy. So this is like that precipice, that diving board into the depths of what Mercury in Scorpio represents. So I think that Mercury in Libra is like a witness, okay? It's like the energy of the witness. It's usually not things happening to them, but they might really witness a lot of things happen to other people that are pretty crazy. They might have the friend who, has something really crazy happen to them, or they just come from a family where there's a lot of dramatic, theatrical scandals or something like that. And they bear witness to all of these things. And that really adds to this feeling of personal disconnection, where the self is not spotlighted too much, because they have to really get out of themselves, it seems to me, like earlier on, and witness these things or these events that happen. And that starts that cycle of just being like really connected to the events and what's outside of themselves, and trying to solve it, or trying to weigh it out, or trying to help other people through it. And there's then this person who the Mercury in Libra is, that is kind of not really into any of that, or not really catching any of that happening, yet they are completely involved. So that's where that disconnect starts at. And over their life, especially if it's a later degree Mercury in Libra, like close to the cusp of Libra and Scorpio, they have to really connect themselves to these things that they're prioritizing, like these scandals, or it might not even be scandal. Maybe it's like a really you know, important career or something that takes like or what they consider to be really important, you know, like lawyer for some huge company or something, or CEO of some huge company, or that's going to be different for everybody, what one considers an important career, but they might just feel that pressure. You know, there's a lot of pressure with this placement to, rise above the ego and rise above these like human choices. Again, Libra is an inanimate energy. So the mind has become a bit inanimate and is working a little bit outside of the self in the 7th house. Okay. Especially if you had this place in the 7th house, but it's the energy of the 7th house. And what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to get across, is that the evolution point for this Mercury is then being able to come back to the self, combining that back together and letting it work in the way that it wants to through these situations. And if it becomes like uncomfortable there, or if the self is not really liking it, here we have an issue where Mercury in Libra maybe has a big transformation or steps in to like a progressed Mercury in Scorpio, you know, something like that, where it becomes much more personalized and a lot less about what they're actually doing. But a very, very interesting placement of Mercury that really ups the stakes of what Mercury energy is with communication and you know, short distance travel and anything like that, and the mental processes. I think that they will thrive even more if they can just personalize it a little bit more and understand how they play into it as people. You know, they are a human. You know, every Mercury in Libra is every bit as human as any other human with any other Mercury placement, but their mind just gets a bit detached from their humanity sometimes, so they got to work on that, okay? Otherwise, there's existential crisis, right? So getting more humanity into their mental processes will really help them to feel more balanced, okay? Always striving for balance with Mercury in Libra. It sounds typical as we are all striving for balance to some degree, and this is a world of polarity. But Mercury in Libra, they kind of have the keys to where the balance is. You know, their mind gets it. So incredible things they could really accomplish though with that capacity. Okay, Mercury in Scorpio, interesting energy here. It changes, and always at this part of the zodiac, whenever I'm going through one of these series installments, when we go from like Virgo to Libra to Scorpio, the zodiac really starts to change up through those 3 signs. And once Mercury gets into Scorpio, the mind changes quite a lot, and the what the mind is used for, or what the communication capacity is used for, becomes something much more powerful, I could say. It's not even so much powerful as it is, you know, cosmic or foreign or unseen. Again, Mercury is trying to work its way to Sagittarius here, so we are starting to deal with the that which is foreign, that which is not customary to us with Mercury and Scorpio. So it's a bit of an uncomfortable place for the soul to be, I'll say, this Mercury placement, because the soul is really trying to play up through the mind. The mind is very connected, and mental processes are very connected to transformative cycles, so sex, death, rebirth, anything like that, 8th house issues, you know, large sums of money, capital, other people's money, taxes. All of these things are going to be very conscious for the Mercury and Scorpio individual, and a bit obsessive as well. This can be a bit of an obsessive placement, kind of like Mercury and Virgo. It's actually very similar to Mercury and Virgo, except it's a touch more emotional and a touch more lifeline oriented. It's not so mundane as Mercury and Virgo, and not so like a task oriented. But this Mercury placement is really good at investigating, really good at understanding a code. So a great Mercury placement to learn a foreign language with, kind of like Mercury and Sag. Because again, we're getting towards the 9th house as well. So great to like learn a new language as a code, you know, a new alphabet or a new form of writing. Really important to be journaling or writing, or basically transmuting a kind of communication. This is what this Mercury sign is meant for, is basically transmutative communication. So you feel a certain thing in your body and you transmute it into written word. Or you hear a certain great placement for an interpreter. You hear another language and you transmute it into something understandable for somebody else. Or for a psychic like myself, you know, you feel a message and you transmute it into YouTube. I have Mercury and Scorpio as well. So that's what Mercury and Scorpio is all about. It's basically the transformation of certain feelings and communications and deep, like source level, soul level things that then become communicated into dialogue like this and made mercurial, which sometimes they have to be careful with that, you know, sometimes, and even I've seen myself, you got to kind of watch out what you put out there. You got to make sure you're not giving something that's too much for other people to take. I do think that this Mercury sign can really struggle with telling people things that they don't need to hear. And I don't feel that to necessarily be like bad karma for the Mercury and Scorpio, but because again, it's not an individual who's communicating something to another individual's fault that the other individual couldn't really take it. So karmically, I don't feel that it's bad, but I think that there's some amount of responsibility there where, you know, a Mercury and Scorpio could meet a random stranger, and kind of like Mercury and Cancer, it might know so quickly like what that person's momentum is, you know, what the difficulties for that person has been, their trauma, things like that. It might really sense that in an empathic way. And the key for Mercury and Scorpio is not to be like, wow, I see that you dealt with abuse for a lot of your relationship history. Why haven't you changed that? You know, like I think that maybe with some certain types of relationship dynamics, they can get to that. But Mercury and Scorpio has to watch out for being like blunt about what could be something much more sensitive to other people, because you have to understand, especially for people with Mercury signs before Scorpio, so from Aries to Virgo, these earlier Mercury signs, the conscious mind is not set up to work with these things, okay? And we talk a lot about that, you know, like, oh, we sweep everything under the rug. Our families have always swept things under the rug, and that can be true. But if their Mercury sign is below Scorpio, there's not a lot of conscious space to comprehend the depths of certain subtle abuse patterns or the depths of certain toxic experiences. And of course, you can have like a Mercury beneath Scorpio, you know, Aries to Virgo, and still comprehend it. It's not saying that you can't comprehend it, but it is more tough, and you might look for some kind of aspect to Mercury to really strengthen, you know, like a Mercury conjunct Pluto is kind of like having Mercury in Scorpio. So you might look for that to really delve into some of these deeper topics that Mercury and Scorpio deals with. But I will also say that a big need for Mercury and Scorpio is to elicit transformation in others through spoken communication. So this can go in really good or bad ways, okay? So some Mercury and Scorpio people are absolutely going to damage other people with their words, absolutely going to cause other people to lose their mind, okay? Mercury and Scorpio, very often a catalyst for someone else's nervous breakdown, okay? Very often a catalyst for somebody else's loss of some kind. You know, perhaps like the best friend of a wife in a difficult marriage who convinces that person to get a divorce, okay? You know, the person who convinces someone in a committed relationship to have an affair because that might be fun. Like, this is when Mercury and Scorpio is not working well, okay? This is when it's at a low vibration. Or, you know, Mercury and Scorpio can be the person who initiates a great healing for somebody, you know, really shows them what they might be capable of, really shows them, you know, a new side to the story and gives them a positive, optimistic injection of communication, a communicative injection of optimism, we'll call it, as it's, especially if it's later in Scorpio getting towards Sag. But yeah, Mercury and Scorpio, anything else that I want to talk about is just be aware of your communication style and how it's changing other people. Okay. Again, it's not really your fault per se, but like sometimes it is if it's negative. Okay. There's a lot of work with self-control with this placement and the controlled speech, controlled things like that, you know, having a lot of power over what is said. And if that's just like unleashed on people or just like lost control of or allowed complete freedom, depending on the subject or depending on certain relationships, it can really create weird knots. You know, in Mercury and Leo, for example, because this is Mercury in a fixed sign again, and I'm thinking of Mercury and Leo interpretation, and there's a similarity there. If you remember in Mercury and Leo, I talked about how things get really knotted up, okay? You know, if you've had like narcissists in your life and you've had like gaslighting or some type of like emotional abuse or something like that, as a Mercury fixed sign, okay, things get really knotted and very rooted, okay? Again, the Scorpio-Taurus axis here. So if you get very brash or very angry or very like, out of control with your communication, you're tearing out all of these roots and you're tearing up all these things, and unrelated things are coming to the surface, and you're having impacts on people that you're not even trying to, and the person that you might be trying to like get at or trying to heal or whatever is like deflecting it, and it's shooting off and creating impacts in other people, and it's just like a ripple with this placement in the communication. Like the communication really ripples. Okay, so what you're saying or what you're putting out as a platform or what you're trying to communicate to people will have a big ripple experience, and it will facilitate things in other people that you would not have thought of. And it's because it's very powerful. Okay, your communication is empowered by the energy of Pluto with this placement. So we have Mercury and Pluto, two similar energies that do the same thing. Mercury as the communicator from the sun to the rest of the solar system, and Pluto as the communicator from our entire solar system into the beyond. Mercury and Pluto are similar when they come together. This is extremely powerful. If you've got a Mercury conjunct Pluto, or if you've got Mercury in Scorpio, or Mercury in the 8th house even, you have to start working with your power and not letting it consume you or overpower you or keep you down, and make sure that you're fostering it in an evolved way, because this Mercury sign can fall really hard too. Okay. I mean, because it's strategic too. Also the energy of Mercury, especially if you got Jupiter involved or Saturn involved in a different way. This is like the chessboard. This is like strategic thinking. This is future tripping, thinking 20 moves down the line. Trying to really like plan things out, never turning off the mind, never like losing like the ego and everything too, never disconnecting from the ego with Mercury and Scorpio, in Mercury in any fixed sign actually. And what you can get with that is just a big fall, Sometimes things have to be let go of. There's a give and take with life. There's a give and take with the universe. All Mercury fixed signs should listen to this and understand. So Mercury in Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius have to be able to let go of the mental torture tactics, okay? And depending on where it's at in the chart, it would show what direction that might go. It's usually always starting at the self with a Scorpio energy, though. Again, this is the 8th house coming from the deepest point of the soul. So it's like if you're feeling a sense of pain or problems or emotional suffering or weird dynamics or like long-lasting knots that can't seem to be overcome as a Mercury in Scorpio, you might take a second to look more at your actions instead of your thoughts, okay? That's going to be really important for Mercury in Scorpio, because I kind of feel that with this placement, it's thinking right, okay? It knows how to get things done. It knows a process. It knows what needs to be done. It knows like all of the like answers to things essentially, because it has a very deep connection with source energy. But the action and the actual life in comparison to it, once you get out of the 8th house, can be very different than what the actual Mercury in Scorpio is envisioning. So there is a bit of, what would I say? It's not quite illusion because it's not Neptune, it's not Pisces, but there's an ideal I feel that this Mercury sign has that does not, or struggles at least, to manifest into existence or to manifest into the real world. So that's kind of their goal, is to be able to get this out, to be able to get these good ideas out in a way that are helpful to other people, and to make sure that they're not living so many different lives of how things could be or how things could heal, because I think that that's really what this placement wants to do at the end of the day. This placement wants to communicate healing. It wants to communicate help, and it wants to, because it's got some answers there, okay? Mercury in Scorpio has got some great answers when it comes to healing old wounds. It's kind of like Scorpio is a venomous energy, right? It's a poisonous energy. So absolutely, a Mercury in Scorpio could be super, super toxic communicator. But also within that communication, within that venom is like the cure for cancer, So there's something potently healing. Also, if you know a Mercury in Scorpio, or you've had a bad experience with a Mercury in Scorpio, interesting to understand how that might have really gotten you on the right path, or that might have really had a healing effect in a different way too. Depending, because sometimes it is lethal, Some people have certain dreams killed by a Mercury in Scorpio, or certain ideals brought down by a Mercury in Scorpio. and probably not purposefully. And you'd actually be interested to know that the karma to the Mercury in Scorpio is not necessarily that high, because they are it's a testing zone. Always with this 6th, 7th, 8th house energy, it's a bit of a testing zone where the strength of what we've accumulated and put together gets really tested. And if it's a balloon, balloons can't do that much. They can only really float up and don't really offer that much. If there's a small prick, it's going to explode. So Mercury in Scorpio is essentially the small prick on these experiences. So what else? There was one other point that I was really wanting to get with Mercury in Scorpio. What was it? Self-dialogue for sure. You might talk to yourself a lot as a Mercury in Scorpio. You might always be journaling to yourself or trying to communicate to yourself what's going on. That's got to become a healing experience. Okay, self-dialogue has to become a healing experience with Mercury and Scorpio, because that's where you're going to find the beginning of everything, If you can really start to talk to yourself kindly, and if you can really start to communicate what needs to be done kindly as a Mercury and Scorpio, you're going to start to have some really wonderful, better relationships, good experiences, and understanding for other people's imperfections. So that would be important. And one more thing, there is the potential for this Mercury sign. It needs to be aspected by something else in a very powerful way to really indicate this, but you can have antagonism with this too. Firstly, being antagonized by other people, being villainized, or being colored or portrayed as somebody who's bad due to the power of your communication. This can seem scary to people, so it can, even if you've not done something that warrants that, it can come across as evil or scary to others. So you got to watch out for that. But also, you can truly be antagonistic if you're not careful, and people don't forget that kind of thing. Okay, you deal with instincts as a Mercury and Scorpio, and the communication of instincts. So once you get that flag of antagonism or something scary, the snake or the scorpion, or as a communication level, because this is high consciousness. This is Mercury. This is what people are really understanding and correlating in their lives. And with your energy in Scorpio, Scorpio being the energy of antagonism and things like that, and dangerous, lethal things, you could be consciously understood by others as the antagonist of a situation. So as a Mercury and Scorpio, you've got to actually compensate just a little bit there and make sure that you're not getting into that territory with your communication. Is what I'm saying as a Mercury and Scorpio helpful to this situation in any way? We got to really be clear with ourselves about that, because once it's not helpful, or once it's not doing anything to fix a problem, it's a fall. It's a fall, okay? And it's very long-term consequences, okay, with this energy once it becomes actually the antagonist. But if you're falsely portrayed as an antagonist, or if you're falsely accused of something, this will really elevate you, because the energy of being falsely accused, so being accused of something, being accused of being something you're not, or being accused of having done something you haven't done, is one of the most uplifting karmic experiences to go through. Literally, the world will put you up to the stars so quick when you're falsely accused. So don't worry about that so much if you're a Scorpio and you've been falsely accused. But do have food for thought if you're getting accusations, or if you're getting this reputation, as the consciousness of other people start to pinpoint you as a snake or a scorpion or a spider. We're scared of those creatures. We kind of want to get rid of them, because they pose a threat to us. Do ask yourself if you actually are being a bit of a threat to people and their stories, and just make sure you're not in that area, and the rest is gravy. Try to stay confident, Mercury and Scorpio, and try to really focus your conscious mind into helping and into healing and into being that cure for cancer, essentially, because that is your energy at its highest point. Okay. Your energy at the lowest point is the antagonist, the snake, and people want that away from them. Okay. So try to really work on cultivating how you want to be known, because there's a lot of control there with Mercury and Scorpio. Okay, and I'm concluding here on this sign, but there's a lot of control and a lot of ability to really cultivate a persona or really cultivate an impression that you give to other people and make it really like authentic and really refined and really connected to who you are. And I think every Mercury and Scorpio has the opportunity to do that. And even it's never too late, you know, like they can really transform their image to other people too. Even if they've been labeled as, you know, the antagonist or the good guy, they can transform that pretty quickly. So just think about it. Food for thought as a Mercury and Scorpio. Really get behind the cultivation of how you're consciously coming off to others. Okay. Super, super interesting placement though. The energy of Mercury and Pluto together. Again, it's not debilitated. Okay. This is not, I talked about some of the difficult points, but this is not a debilitation. So Mercury is happy and fine to be placed in this sign. It's just a kind of synchronistic energy where the energy of two messengers have come together. So lots of messages to be portrayed, lots of eyes to open and transformations to elicit with this placement. So have fun, keep it healing oriented. Okay, moving on. Mercury in Sagittarius. So this is the first debilitated placement of Mercury that we will be speaking about. And if you've seen some of the other videos like this, debilitation is not necessarily always, you know, a horrible thing. It just means that the archetype through which the planet channels, which in Mercury's case is communication, mental processes, health of the nervous system, things like that, it just means that there's a karmic trajectory that may have been difficult in a past life or in your own past that creates a need to focus in this area and to do some healing in this area. So if you've got Mercury in Sagittarius, there's some healing to do where it comes to the attention span, when it comes to communication, and when it comes to focus as well. This to me is one of the biggest signs of attention deficit disorder or any type of issue with attention span. There can be a difficult with Mercury and Sag to focus on something for a long time or to really naturally focus the attention well. And they can become really good at that. In fact, this can be a very intelligent Mercury placement. Again, Sagittarius is the 9th house. This is, you know, higher goals, philosophy, academia, you know, higher learning, anything like that. So Mercury is okay with that. I mean, it gives maybe intelligence about culture or international affairs or geography or something worldly, but it's a bit lofty also for Mercury. Mercury is not about these higher knowledges. This is about, you know, very direct, it's more so a cognitive ability than it is like higher knowledge. And this is an important distinction for Mercury itself. When we think of Mercury, and we're thinking of the mental processes or anything like that, it's not like the higher thoughts, like the philosophies or the super, super high vibrational thinking. And this is shown by Mercury's debilitation in Sagittarius. This says that Mercury is just about more so the cognitive ability, how our electrical system within the nervous system is calibrating itself. It's not so much about these loftier things or worldly things because it's debilitated in Sagittarius. That kind of cancels out the energy of Mercury just a little bit and is more so in the area of Jupiter. Now, that is the other reason that Mercury is debilitated in Sagittarius, and in both of the signs traditionally ruled by Jupiter. It is also debilitated in Pisces, and Jupiter was the traditional ruler of Pisces. That is because Mercury is the smallest planet in the solar system, and Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. So Mercury placed into Sagittarius makes the energy a little bit too big. It can't really contain the energy of Jupiter well. So Mercury and Sag will also get outside of itself just a little bit, out-of-body experiences. It can be difficult to confine certain things where they need to be. There can be too much effort towards consolidation or toward merging things in life. You know, for example, if you've got a job as an accountant, you might really be trying to get outside of it. Like, I'm going to be, you know, the accountant who's also like famous on social media, you know, and by accounting, I'm going to be famous on social media. It's getting like outside of itself, you know, which isn't always bad. Like Sagittarius does good with that type of thing. But as a Mercury and Sag, you've got to really think about what you're doing and how it confines you, and understand if that is too confining or too it holds things in too much. I do see claustrophobia with this placement sometimes, and agoraphobia as well, less likely, but anything that deals with spatial awareness or that deals with placing yourself into a certain environment, there can be a bit of a struggle with this placement. These people have such big energy fields. Like they're very, like one individual person might have the like energy arc field of a house or something. It's really big and it's really far outside of themselves. And that's because there's an issue with specifically the vestibular system within the nervous system. There's a vestibular type of sometimes decalibration that I see with this placement where people can struggle to really place themselves in a situation. And this comes sometimes at both a physical level, but also at a spiritual level too. Like, how am I placed in this situation? They can kind of get outside of it. You know, say this person who's a Mercury and Sag really wants to, I don't know, be a diplomat or do something, you know, really lofty and worldly. They might be in a very rural town and be dreaming about being a diplomat, and they're not really connecting that, okay, if I want to be a diplomat or if I want to do something on the world stage, maybe I need to be in like New York or London or Washington or something like that. And they're in a rural town and they're thinking, I'm going to be the diplomat from the rural town. It's the vestibular ability is kind of a little bit off there. Do you see what I mean? And you can apply this as an analogy for most things within a Mercury and Sagittarius life. Oftentimes I see long commutes or working out of state or living somewhere and then working really far away from there, having to travel a lot. And oftentimes there's a question of like, why don't you move or why don't you go and make things easier for yourself? A lot of time might be lost in travel or in commutes or in jobs that are not feeling right while dreaming about things that do and not being necessarily able to connect the dots. And this was also a little bit in Mercury and Scorpio too, where, okay, so I'm seeing that between Mercury and Scorpio, Sag and Capricorn, there is a, it's not even just a duality, but there's a disconnect between how I see myself and what I want for myself versus the reality outside of myself, really strong in these three Mercury signs. And it's like the process of combining and consolidating what I want versus my external reality between Mercury and Scorpio to Mercury and Capricorn. And Mercury and Sag is like the deepest point of this. So your life mission, I feel, as Mercury and Sag is to understand what you want. You should have a really good conscious understanding of what you want out of life, okay? About a bigger dream or about a bigger goal that should come to you like every single day. And can you actually get behind it? And will you allow yourself to focus on a path that will allow you to get there? And really watch out for distractions or any type of like addictions or anything that really distracts you from the path or distracts you from the reality of where you're at. So being addicted to the screen, too much TV, any type of substance that blurs your mind would be a very direct coping mechanism for this placement, because I think that there is pain in this Mercury placement because it wants bigger things. It wants something more grand, more lofty, more ninth house, you know? But it's having to channel this through the energy of Mercury in the third and sixth house, you know? So this is like the feeling of something really grand and possible and potential filled becoming very mundane. Okay. So it does pull down the energy. This placement naturally shackles down the Sagittarius energy line just a little bit. Now, it's going to depend on your configurations and what's touching this placement, where your Jupiter is placed specifically in your chart. You know, if you've got a debilitated Jupiter as well, you might see the more difficult end of this. If you've got a well-placed Jupiter, you'll be able to kind of overcome this easily. But always with Mercury and Sag, there's going to be a challenge regarding how big am I thinking about things, like how big am I making things in my mind and where are they going to take me, versus how that's implemented in reality. Because Mercury is also implementation. It's Virgo. It's the sixth house when it's at its healthiest. So Mercury and Sag, you've got to start implementing your wants and your desires, and you've got to do it every day, and you've got to schedule it, and you've got to do it out there. Again, Sagittarius is kind of a sign that's very subject to whims and very subject to how it feels in a given moment. You know, someone with well-placed Sagittarius energy will oftentimes do their best work on a whim, or they'll get a boost or a burst of energy that maybe writes them the best song that they've ever written if they're a songwriter. But when Mercury is in Sagittarius, it doesn't quite work that way. This has got to regiment the energy of Sag and really schedule it out and make it strong and not get overwhelmed with things, okay? Not get, pulled into oblivion by a sense of overwhelm that's just in the mind and not even outside of the body. So I do see procrastination a lot with this placement, and especially if there's any type of depression or any type of overwhelm, they sometimes will not even like clean or do anything like that. Like they will completely just lose track of their like ability toward action at its worst. When this placement gets falls into depression or falls into anything like that, if Neptune is especially in a conjunction or something, which is totally possible. We've had Neptune and Sag in the recent generations. So definitely gotta maybe get a good therapist with this placement, or a life coach even, or somebody who can really motivate Mercury and Sag and teach Mercury and Sag to motivate itself and to regiment and make routine its own sense of motivation. That's really the only way to overcome the difficulties that can come about because of this Mercury placement. And just keep an eye on yourself. Keep an eye on your environment. Again, Mercury is always going to be your 6th house mundane sense of surroundings. So if there's a lot of lack of cleanliness, or if there's a lot of disarray, and then a lot of coping mechanisms, maybe an addiction, or a commute that's just overwhelming or something, there's some problems, okay? There are some things that need to be fixed, and oftentimes it's not by other people, it's by self-implementation and wrapping your head around it. And usually it's not even the Mercury and Sag that will recognize this as necessarily problematic, because they can very easily detach from the reality of their surroundings and sort of live on the inside, sustaining themselves off of how things like could be in the future, the 9th house. Lots of future tripping potentially with this placement, lots of lofty big goals that are wonderful and good ideas, wonderful intellectual property with Mercury and Sagittarius, wonderful, great like dreamer or visionary, or somebody who could like make great plans for a company, but when it comes to implementation, that can struggle. So there needs to be teamwork also with this placement. It's not very self-sufficient, okay? And I will just put that out there. Of course, there can be other things in the chart. You've got a moon in the 4th house, or you've got a Saturn in the 4th house, or, something strong placed into a house that deals with selfhood that can totally contradict this. But the 6th house aspects of Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury being placed into the 9th house, it makes for a potential to really lack self-sufficiency. So we got to work on that as a Mercury and Sag, and really find our selfhood, and really find, because they can always build it. This sign can build anything. This sign can foster anything. It's got all the ideas, and it's got all the motivation to make it possible. It's just got to learn how to properly implement this motivation and put it outside of themselves properly. It also has little tolerance for negative thinking, or little tolerance for being, told that something is too expensive or unlikely. Any form of no is a big deterrent for this placement, because again, Mercury's been placed into optimistic Sagittarius, which is another reason why it's debilitated, is because Mercury is pragmatic. It's Virgo and Gemini, so it's a complete pragmatist. It's a neutral, and Sagittarius is an optimist. Okay, and so as a Mercury and Sag, try to disconnect from no or negative experiences, or anything that is not a direct, expansion of what you want, any type of reduction. Try to, instead of losing everything and falling into like a depression, try to start a self-dialogue about, why has no come into my life? Why has reduction or any type of limitation entered in? And how can I work with that? And do I want to work with that if there's a limitation here, or if there's a lot of pessimism or a lot of negative people around me? Am I going to try to keep doing this? Do I need to go elsewhere? Do I need to find a different path where I can find more optimism? But try to really wrap your mind around why things have become pessimistic, or why things have become negative. Because once you unlock that as a Mercury and Sag, you really have a lot of room to get things better and to make things expansive once more. But try to avoid any type of covering your eyes and covering your ears and pretending that things are not a problem and expecting to engage it tomorrow or the next day and everything to just be wonderful. Sometimes there can be a suspension of disbelief with this placement, and Mercury and Pisces, both of the debilitations for Mercury, can deal a lot with suspension of disbelief and pretend world and how things could be if only this or that unlikely thing happened. We got to really get lower down actually into the consciousness, and a bit more pragmatic, and have fun, humor, great humor with this placement, a natural comedian, okay? Really make things funny for yourself. Really maybe watch comedy videos if you're not feeling well, but always maybe have a time of the day or a time of the week where the bills are paid or where you're understanding more clearly what doesn't need to continue on or something like that. And that will help you to not create scenarios with this placement that are so overwhelming and so absolutely momentously a train wreck and heavy on account of years and years and years and years of convincing yourself that things are better than they are, or like more potential filled than they are, to where you get kind of stuck. Now, you're never totally stuck with Mercury in a mutable sign, but again, this sign can convince itself that things are a bigger problem than they are too. Everything's bigger than it actually is. Everything's like a, big problem or great success, and there's no in between. But once this Mercury sign can integrate pragmatism into their philosophical sphere of thinking, it's so powerful, and it's so motivated, and it's a great visionary. Okay, so any type of career or any type of relationship that deals with being a visionary and maybe having somebody else to implement things, that would be perfect, and that would really show how this sign can thrive more. So moving on. Okay, Mercury in Capricorn. So a good placement for Mercury. It can be a bit pessimistic and a bit play things safe all the time, but that's not really bad with this energy, because it gives you a lot of ability to make solid plans and put in solid goals for all of your different ideas that you have in life. So we just talked about Mercury in Sagittarius, and Mercury in Capricorn is like the evolution of Mercury in Sagittarius. So by now with Mercury in Capricorn, you might, if you have Mercury in Capricorn, you probably see that there's like not a lot of tolerance for procrastination, or not a lot of tolerance for anything that's too lofty or too big. This is kind of playing things safe and playing things proper as well. The status might be on your mind a lot, like your status, your social status, or your solidness in life, your stability. There's going to be a lot of focus on self-sustaining actions, self-sufficiency, having enough money to maybe not even have to work for a living. Overcoming working class ideation is going to be a big thing for this placement. Overcoming poverty consciousness, overcoming anything that is a limitation. So sometimes there are rags to riches stories with Mercury in Capricorn. These people can build things from the ground up very easily. Your mental processes as a Mercury in Capricorn are basically formed around the concept of having like this solid ground, this like ground level thing that starts, and then you build it from the ground up. So a great placement for an architect, a great placement for a gardener, a great placement for somebody in agriculture or any type of building or zoning. There's a lot of groundedness with this placement, working with the ground and building from the ground as well. We've had Mercury come into the sign of Saturn, so this just gives a really tough mind. So really tough person, somebody who is like unbreakable. If you are not a Mercury in Capricorn and you're watching this because you know a Mercury in Capricorn, do you understand that there's going to be some amount of stubborn nature with this placement? These people are not very manipulatable. These people are not very changeable either. They have a linear path. This is Mercury in cardinal energy. So once they get in their mind that they're going to reach a certain goal or they're going to get to a certain place, no one can really get in their way. And it's going to be really solid and tangible as well. This isn't, because in Mercury in Sag and also Mercury in Pisces as well, you can get a little bit too optimistic or too out of reality with the path. But Mercury in Capricorn has the perfect mixture of, on one hand, striving for something better, but on the other hand, actually being able to implement it and actually being able to work with it. The 10th house works really well with the energy of the 6th house version of Mercury. Now, Mercury is also the ruler of Gemini, so there could be an argument also that there is a bit of a communication issue with this placement, like maybe they're too blunt or seen as too honest or seen as uncontrollable by other people. So for that reason, Mercury in Capricorn could be resented by people, or there could be contention with relationships because you can't be controlled by other people as a Mercury in Capricorn, and you have a certain status potential as well. Like people will really sense like regardless of your social status, people will kind of sense you as somebody with potential. You'll very much be labeled as this person has potential, this person could go somewhere, or this person could really help to build, my goals. So people might try to kind of take control of that or commandeer that, and that won't really work for them. So there can be issues with this placement that come from an unwillingness to be controlled or bossed around or anything like that. Again, this placement definitely wants to be the boss. It wants to be at least the boss of itself. It's very self-sufficient, super, super self-sufficient on this axis. And the mind is super self-sufficient. So there could even be a hesitation to enter into relationships or to find marriage as well, unless that comes with some amount of convenience or status or something like for your career as well. Love marriages, I definitely see like arranged marriages potentially with this, or at least the thought processes or the communication could be more archaic, okay? And they might kind of think, okay, how am I going to arrange the best lifestyle for myself or arrange the best status for myself? And in that way, they can kind of bypass a bit of happiness too. So you got to watch out with Mercury and Capricorn for being too downtrodden or being too pessimistic, or kind of even saying like, maybe I'm just not meant for happiness or something like that. And you just end up working 70 hours a week and having a marriage that was not really based on love, and, having maybe all the money in the world, or at least enough to get by and to be stable, but not really feeling like it's valuable or something. There's a lot of like value conceptualization with this placement. Like, how much is my house worth? How much is my time worth? How much is my relationship worth to me? What is it really giving? How is it paying me back? I think that the mind is so formulaic in that way, potentially, with this placement, and the goal is going to be able to detach from that and disconnect from that sometimes. Definite workaholic, potentially, with this placement. Definitely somebody who, I wouldn't call them a risk taker, but yeah, they might really like, it's like go big or go home when it comes to business or anything like that, or career. If they do it, they're going to give it 1,000,000%. And that's the thing, like everybody wants the 1,000,000% from Mercury and Capricorn, but it's hard for anybody to commandeer that. So there's again, that I keep coming back to that. There's a kind of sometimes a difficult relationship with people because you won't give them what they want unless you want to do it, which is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it can bring about some miscommunication. And like, for example, somebody thinks that, oh yeah, I can hire this person into my company and they'll quickly take the job, and they've already set up the contracts and they've already funded it, and then you reject the contract and it breeds contention, and then that employer talks to all the other employers, and it can, because you definitely get into reputation also with this placement, or your mind might be really focused on reputation. Do watch out, Mercury and Capricorn, about accidentally leading people on, or accidentally telling people, yeah, I would work for you, or I would do this or that, and then when they come to you with the contract, you're like, what? No, I won't do that. It's not that you're flighty, obviously, but you want the best, and you want, you know how valuable your time is. Mercury and Capricorn understands the value of time and the value of everything, really. Everything is starting at value with this placement. So yeah, great business person, great, real estate agent or something like that, just because you would maybe be able to walk into a home or walk into a property and very quickly understand its value, okay? It's going to be important to have like hours where you're there, though. What do I mean by this? It's like you need to maybe set hours or set a time slot for your day where you're only thinking about value, or you're only thinking about how things move forward, and to where it's not dominating you 24/7. And hopefully you have like maybe a Venus or a Jupiter placement in your chart, or even a Neptune placement that can help you to disconnect and just enjoy the fun aspects of life and the more fantastical aspects of life, because you don't want to just be in this slate all the time, I feel, with Mercury and Capricorn. Also, lots of thoughts about the parental structure too. I think this could be a very good parent, potentially. And if you are, you're going to be thinking a lot about legacy, okay? As a parent yourself, as Mercury and Capricorn, there's going to be a lot of focus on how you connect with children and on how you create a legacy, or how you create an ancestral tie. Okay, as Mercury and Capricorn, and Mercury and Capricorn or Cancer on this axis, there's a direct focus on establishing a legacy or establishing a family center point. So do be aware with all these value systems coming into your life. Is that what you want for your children? You know, do you want your children to be very connected to value on every single thing? If you do, I mean, it will be easy, but there might also be a need with this placement to disconnect from value just a little bit and foster some amount of love as well. Because definitely after the second Saturn return, to a degree after the first one too, so after you're about 60 years old, there's going to be a big, like a sudden realization of what your time has gone to, like kind of a bad midlife crisis, potentially. Not a bad midlife crisis, but a like, whoa, like a shock value that maybe love was never really a big focus, or that could never really, it just wasn't ever even on your mind. And there can be regret with this placement. Always with Capricorn placements, there can be regret over how we've spent time and how we've built our lives. So if you can work with that as early as possible, you know, fostering love and fostering an enjoyable life, you will feel better, okay? And just try to balance, you know, the work and the love life and all that kind of stuff, and try to make room for both. And that's what I feel for Mercury in Capricorn. Okay, moving on to Mercury in Aquarius. Okay, so Mercury in Aquarius, this is a great placement because this is Mercury placed into its higher octave sign of Aquarius, putting the energy of Uranus with Mercury, which is naturally very harmonic. So yeah, this is a genius mind for sure with Mercury in Aquarius, very prodigal, so a prodigy or somebody who can advance really quickly in individual fields. Also somebody who is very innovative and concerned with societal implications as well. So these could be leaders of certain societal movements, or people who are very dialed into the collective consciousness, anything like that for Mercury in Aquarius. Also people who want to reinvent the wheel, or people who want to reform things, or create a new status quo. That's what Aquarius is all about, because it's coming from the sign of Capricorn, which is the status quo, and Aquarius is now a fixed sign, and it's a reinvention. So this is an aim towards a new fixed status quo with Mercury in Aquarius, and with this being placed with Mercury, it means that your mind is going to be very concerned with how can I create a new status quo for myself, or for other people even. How can I maybe shape society? It's a good trendsetter energy for sure. This person with Mercury in Aquarius is going to be, you know, probably ahead of their time to some degree, and you know, very probably ahead of the curve too. So there can be difficult social experiences, I think, for that reason, because you might not fit in with the current grain, or you might not fit in with the current you know, things going on. But yes, you will see as Mercury in Aquarius that you have really good ideas because of this. So a great placement for somebody who, again, is a visionary, somebody who, you know, maybe is really working in intellectual property, or something dealing with branding as well. Good for marketing, good for analytics, good for demographics. All of these types of fields would be really natural for Mercury in Aquarius. Also, there can be detachment. So a general detached affect with Mercury in Aquarius. These people might not be super emotional. I mean, unless they've got another placement that indicates that, depending on where the moon is, obviously. But yeah, Mercury in Aquarius, it can be a very detached disposition. So people may not see you as too emotional, which could be really good in certain circumstances, but it's always going to be good to cultivate more emotional expression as Mercury in Aquarius, and more enjoyment as well. Like I think that there's sort of a blatant understanding of what needs to be accomplished, or the progress that needs to be made. And then once that understanding happens, there is a detachment from what the Mercury person is really doing it for, what they're really connecting to, what their real motivation is. So Mercury in Aquarius, once you can combine like true motivation with this new ideal, you will get like a super amount of progress for sure. You know, definitely don't deny the relationships in your life, and don't try to just close the door on those things, because I can see that with this placement. Sometimes they really close the door on things like family or relationships, or any like heart-centered or solar plexus-centered experiences. This is very like third eye, very crown energy as well. So it's high up. This is one of the highest levels of consciousness. Somebody with Mercury in Aquarius really achieving a superhuman level of consciousness. So with that can be energetically expensive to maintain. So yeah, headaches, you know, migraines or neurological issues if the energy is too pressurized. So if you've put way too much pressure on yourself, if you've not taken time to rest, or if you've not taken time out for yourself, you know, autoimmune issues, specifically dealing with the nervous system would be possible because it's so electric. Okay, you can really burn yourself out easily with this placement if you overdo this sort of detached, methodical progression cycle that is very typical with this placement. And yes, it's just very scientific, you know, great for a scientist, great for an astrologer as well, or an astronomer, or a physicist, or something like that, even a doctor with this placement, because you can really detach, you know, from the pain of other people and try to find a solution. But then after that shift, you have to really also up your personal life and make sure you are having like cozy experiences in life and making sure that you are retaining an amount of warmth, because it becomes very cold and very electric, very Vulcan, this energy. If it's just working and it's just, you know, detaching and it's just finding solutions, it becomes a bit of a robot, you know, and humans aren't robots, humans are humans, so they will become ill themselves if they are losing their humanity. Because again, Mercury in Aquarius and Mercury in Pisces are both detaching from humanity. I always say with Aquarius and Pisces, the last two signs of the zodiac, we're leaving the human condition just a little bit here. Kind of like robots and aliens, you know, Aquarius like robots and Pisces like aliens. So Mercury in Aquarius, there's a fine line, because once Mercury goes into Pisces, it becomes debilitated, and because that level of consciousness is really tough for Mercury to comprehend. So you're right at that line, you're right at that area, especially if it's late in Aquarius, if it's in late degrees, you're at a crossing point of getting like way too out of yourself too, kind of like Mercury and Sag as well. So you want to keep in yourself, you want to keep connected to what you want as a person, and then you want to thrive, you know, and find those discoveries or elicit those discoveries that you want to make in life, and you know, great potential for healing or for discovering something unknown to humanity thus far with this placement. So very, very neat energy, and very eccentric in a way as well. Yeah, so anyway, moving on, Mercury in Pisces. Okay, this is our last one. So this is also Mercury's other debilitated sign. I am sorry to tell you, Mercury is indeed quite debilitated in Pisces. And as I said in the Sag portion, which was Mercury's other debilitated sign, Mercury in Sagittarius, debilitation is not always a bad thing. They can be very well healed and very well evolved, and you can make them really the best, you know, your own personal best essence can come from your debilitations after working with them. So with Mercury in Pisces, the reason that it's debilitated is just like Sag. Pisces was traditionally ruled by Jupiter before Neptune was discovered, and the energy of both Jupiter and Neptune are too large and too comprehensive for Mercury to be contained by the energy of the smallest planet in our solar system, Mercury. So Pisces is a very psychic sign. It's a very other-dimensional, otherworldly sign, and Mercury is specifically the messenger of this solar system. It's very bound to this solar system and the consciousness of this solar system, and Pisces gets quite far out of that. Again, we've transcended the human condition, so Mercury feels a bit blunted by this energy, and like it's not really being effective, and it's not really finding the communication center or finding the mental process that it needs in Pisces. So there's a lot of conscious psychic ability with this placement, very empathetic, and quite tough to separate the emotions from the mental, okay? The emotions from the logical, more so. It's difficult to separate these things. And that's going to be the goal. That's going to be what Mercury in Pisces has to do to overcome these difficult stories that they find themselves in, is to find that separating point between the logical and the emotional, and to be able to go back and forth between each one, like a healthy Mercury sign knows that it has to. So what you're gifted with this sign is the ability to really feel out any experience. Like, you'll be very empathetic to everything that you need to do. You, like, if you think of this career or that career or this relationship or that relationship, you'll know really quickly what it can give to you and how you're going to feel, 5 years down the line or however long. But that can be overwhelming as well, to kind of know the totality of a situation before it even begins. So you kind of want to disconnect from that in a way and use it when it's appropriate and use it when it's time. Also, Mercury in Pisces, you got to watch out for imposing as well. This is all the Mercury water signs to a degree can be a bit imposing because they're everywhere. It makes the consciousness like everywhere. People can kind of feel like you're in their energy, or especially if you're around other people who are psychic or around other people who are empathetic, other empaths will kind of, and this is kind of a tough message. I've never understood this before about Mercury and Pisces, but other empaths will kind of reject Mercury and Pisces just a touch because it feels like this type of empathy that you're offering is imposing, or that there's some kind of, it's hard to explain, undeniability about your presence at all times in all places. It's a very omniscient energy line. And Mercury is not omniscient. Mercury is very refined and pointed and very locational, very bound to individual locations energetically. I know this is very complex conceptualization, but the key in overcoming this debilitation is going to be refining and pulling in and reducing the scope of your output as a person into something with a laser focus. And again, as I said, any Mercury debilitation, it can look like attention problems or communication issues or a stutter, or difficult in especially in Mercury and Pisces case, expressing the emotions, communicating the emotions to other people is the most obvious thing to me about the difficulty with this placement. But once this placement can really refine itself and start to learn to communicate its emotions by communicating them to itself first and foremost, and then to the other people, and then by understanding who it still can't communicate the emotions to, then refine the types of people that are around the Mercury in Pisces, you have an incredible totalist, I'm going to call you. Somebody who can see the totality of so many different situations. A very, very mature mindset, very, very old soul type of energy here that can really help many people, help huge groups of people. I see a lot of charity with this energy, and a lot of resolutions found to old problems and to things that seemingly would go on forever without any type of change in direction. So you have an incredible capacity as Mercury and Pisces to really shift the direction for other people, to really shift other people's burnout as well, and to heal people from burnout. So a great placement for a psychotherapist or a therapist once they have this evolution, once they refine themselves, and once they feel that they're not just energetically everywhere all at once. As I said with Mars and Pisces, if you saw my Mars video, there's a feeling of godliness with this energy where it feels like I'm everywhere, it feels like we're everywhere, or I'm not bound to one place, and that's a bit of a folly of the placement, and it's a bit of an ego thing as well, but there is some truth to it too, where it's hard to stay in yourself, and it's hard to only experience your own life with this placement, because your mental process is very tied into everybody, okay? 12th house, You just have to start to gain a conscious ability to bring it back to yourself and keep inside. And how do you do that? I think you have to stop caring sometimes, okay, about people who have mistreated you, or about people who you have no correlation with. It's one thing if it's your career, like you're a public servant or something, I guess, and you need to do that for a job. That might be good for this placement. They could really focus it into their job, then they could go home, and then they could worry about themselves more and really have that separating line. But you want to make sure that you're not just spending all your time worrying about other people, okay? Worrying about how other people think of you, worrying about how other people thought of that what you were wearing, or how you entered the room, or something like that. It can be pretty I want to say self-nagging sometimes with this placement too. It's because, again, Mercury is natural ruler of Gemini and Virgo, which can both be nagging energies and very critical and very detail oriented, and then putting it on Pisces, it just raises or expands that scope to an array of things that those critical energies cannot really work with. So there's a spinning of the wheels, not really progressing with this too, things done in vain, I think, with this placement. But that's okay. We all do that sometimes. But you just got to realize it, and you got to recognize when, maybe you're laying awake late at night, not being able to sleep, criticizing yourself for a certain expression that nobody really caught on to in the first place. This is where Mercury in Pisces starts to fall apart a bit. And, sometimes you see a big falling out, or a big, rock bottom with this placement. It's very deep, okay, very, very far down it can be. And that just gives you the initiative to really build in a new way in the future, because it is only through those types of experiences that people really then renown or refine themselves to be renowned, you know? So you're working through that level of consciousness, and watch out for inviting it, though. It's not an invitation to say, okay, come get me rock bottom so I can be renowned or something like that. But if you're listening to this, I would say that that's already been a part of the story, and that's already kind of hit you, and now it's probably time to start building up and to really become an adept swimmer and navigator of life, because what you get also with a Mercury in any water sign is this like sonar system, and there's a good ability to navigate and a good like compass that you have for making certain decisions. And Mercury in Pisces is perhaps the more uncalibrated version at first, because this is a debilitation, but it's there for you. And as you grow and as you get stronger and as you make these good decisions, that gets more and more refined, and you have this great sonar to kind of understand how to proceed. So Mercury in Pisces, people will love you. People will think that you're, the greatest friend, or understand things like no other. Like I can pretty much guarantee you, as a Mercury in Pisces, every friend or acquaintance that you've had finds you irreplaceable to some degree, and does not feel as if they have been heard or understood by anyone else, okay, in the way that you have understood them. So that makes you very valuable to people, okay? And there are some weird connections that you can have based on your value, your emotional value to people, really defying class, or really defying anything, really, any type of like border or boundary. Your emotional need to other people is completely in time and space and outside of physical, construct. So very interesting things we're working with there, Mercury in Pisces. Watch out also for any type of substance or any type of, consciousness defying experience that comes up, because that's very hard to get out of once those cycles are started for this sign. Not impossible, but it usually takes something like rehab, or it takes some kind of very controlled institutional approach to heal and overcome a cycle of conscious disruption or break with this physical world. So keep that in mind. Avoid it. Say no. It's one of those just say no things for this placement for sure, because that is a lifelong Pandora's box for some of them. But anyway, Mercury in Pisces. Anything else that I want to mention about it? Really great for art, okay? Like calligraphy, or some kind of graphic design, or some kind of world building or something. As like a game artist or something like that would be really great, because you kind of need something to just pour time into with this placement. You just need to like pour hours and hours into some kind of craft, or into something that is an expression of much deeper, because it is hard for the words or for the writing or for the communication to ever express the depth of how you feel about something. So yeah, great to have a huge canvas that is just an ongoing project, or an album, or some type of artistic pacing will really help you. And you can make some of those beautiful things. I think some of the most refined, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the most refined artists have this placement. Especially visual artists. I'm getting especially visual artist for this, but not necessarily. I mean, it could be music, or it could be theater, or anything. But anyway, thank you so much, Mercury in Pisces. I think that is where I will conclude for you today. And on that note, it appears as if we have gone through all 12 signs for the planet of Mercury, and we are right at 2 hours and 20 minutes. If you got through the whole entire video, congratulations. You understand an integral part of astrology, which is the planet of Mercury. I have an entire playlist below where I have gone over the ascendant, the moon, Venus, and Mars, and now we have Mercury. So that's 5 whole planets done, and in a playlist for your convenience to view. And I am also on Patreon if you would like to get more of my content, early and ad-free weekly tea chats, all kinds of stuff that changes depending on the season. You can be sure to check my Patreon below. That will be linked. And if you're new to the YouTube channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and thumbs up this video. It helps the YouTube algorithm to get this video out there. Just hit that thumbs up button, and perhaps even share it with someone that you also know enjoys astrology as well. This has been Sky here, bringing you guys some esoteric knowledge. I hope you've enjoyed it. And on that note, I will be talking to you later. Much love. Bye.